Which is worse, being written out of the American dream and feeling that you've been rendered largely invisible, or witnessing a political charlatan hijack your voice to push an agenda that perpetuates your erasure? Since now vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance published his memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, in 2016, it's faced a chorus of criticism from many in Appalachia who accuse him of distorting his rags to riches story by making generalizations about a region that spans 13 states in which 26.4 million people live. The renowned social justice advocate Brian Stevenson once said, quote, "The greatest pain is to be seen as a problem to be fixed instead of a person to be loved." Vance's book exemplifies this. It portrays Appalachians as lazy, ignorant drug addicts, a long-form rehashing of Ronald Reagan's notorious welfare queen stereotype, one that's used by conservatives to justify cuts to government assistance. Vance, a retired Marine and Yale Law School grad turned tech bro, takes great liberties in speaking in the name of Appalachia's poor white communities, but he didn't actually grow up as a fabled hillbilly from Appalachia. He's from Middletown, Ohio, a suburb of Cincinnati, which is technically not even part of Appalachia. By the time he was born, he was 2 generations removed from that region. Hillbilly Elegy is less a memoir than a privileged outsider's classist take on an entire region. Vance's generalizations, he generalizes his family's experience, including his mother's very serious drug addiction, to all of Appalachia. He never considers the broader context of poverty, such as the opioid crisis that has left Appalachian communities devastated. It's a fact he conveniently leaves out, perhaps because of his ties to Purdue Pharma, the drug company that strategically targeted the region, flooding it with opioids. Vance's depictions of Appalachia mirror the dehumanizing narratives that have long been used to justify the exploitation of its labor and its land. Appalachian writer Meredith McCarroll sees Vance as part of this long and troubled history, writing, quote, "First it was timber, later it was coal, now it's identity." Vance tapped a vein and extracted an identity that allows him to be of the people while he blames the people for their challenges. He climbed the ladder and he pulled it up behind him, blaming those left behind, end quote. Vance, in fact, ignores mountains of evidence showing that Appalachia suffers from a history of government neglect and corporate exploitation. According to 2 researchers who profiled hundreds of people in the region, quote, "They worked harder than either of us ever will, but still could not pay their bills." Public policy should not be based on a golden boy who beats the odds. It should recognize the experiences of vast swaths of Americans who are following all the rules and still falling behind, end quote. Vance's distortion of Appalachia to advance his political ambitions is part of a larger troubling pattern with the Ohio senator, his opportunism, and his naked ambition. Republican Senator Mitt Romney noted this character flaw early on, saying he couldn't disrespect someone more than he did J.D. Vance. His criticism came after Vance did a complete 180 on Donald Trump, going from being a vocal critic and labeling him America's Hitler to fully embracing the MAGA movement in the run-up to his 2022 Senate campaign. Romney, speaking to his biographer, mused, quote, "How can you go over a line so stark as that? It's like, really? You sell yourself so cheap?" Now, with Vice President Kamala Harris at the top of the Democratic ticket, the GOP's assumptions about the race have been entirely upended, and Vance's controversial history is suddenly looking less appealing to Republicans who worry that he could actually repel swing voters. Recent polling shows that Vance is deeply unpopular, but now he's part of Trump's team. Together, the convicted felon and the wannabe hillbilly, selling snake oil to ordinary Americans. But if recent polls are any indication, it's not so clear that the con is working anymore. Perhaps it's best we heed the warnings of those who saw through Vance early on. Like the aforementioned Meredith McCarroll, who in 2023 wrote, quote, "As Vance enters the halls of the U.S. Senate with a narrative of oppression, blaming not Purdue Pharma, but his addicted mother, blaming not the tax breaks that move jobs out of the country, but the immigrants who seek a new home, blaming not the systems of poverty that were perpetuated in his family, but rather the laziness of his own family. The stories he chooses to tell matter. Pay attention to his narratives. They have taken him far and can continue to shift to carry him even farther."